good? Alright guys, I'm going to need attention for a little while. I'm just going to show you the basics on how you start off your base for your Jomon Pottery. So the first thing you need is a slab. And who remembers how thick the slab has to be? Is that curiosity? Anyone remember? No? Alright. Well, it has to be about a 1/2 inch thick. And I understand they'll probably be already pre-made for you for tomorrow, which is good for you guys. It'll be fast and easy. But I just kind of have a pre-rolled slab here for time purposes. And I have also pre-rolled coils, so that way this demo can go a little bit quicker. I understand you guys did olive planters, and you guys already know this process. I didn't feel like I had to reteach that. So, does anyone remember how wide the base has to be, the diameter? Maybe. Yeah, so about a CD, right? All right, so I don't have no template to go by, so I'm just gonna eyeball it, but let's just say it's about the size of the CD. Now how about the coils? How big do the coils have to be? Come on guys, I know you guys know this. Yeah, about a nickel, right? All right, so I can tell someone was paying attention. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, so these are perfect, so about this size. It doesn't have to be the perfect size of the CD. These are great to use. I'm just going to use the roll-up tape right now. Everybody has a pin tool in their toolkit. When they come into school, I understand that they probably won't be sent home, but that's fine. When you use this pin tool, I want to make sure this is vertical, so I cut straight into the clay, straight down. If I come at an angle, it's going to undercut it. It's going to leave a little bit of a beveled edge, and that's something I don't want. So as vertical as possible, I want to just trace around my template best I can. Get a little key out. Then separate. Now this clay can be reused, so definitely put it in your bag. If you have to re-wet it, maybe it's a little bit stiffer, you can always re-wet it, and it'll be workable later. All right. So this is a little bit thicker than I actually need it, so I'm actually going to break this in half. And we'll roll it out to be a little bit thinner. Now, since these coils are going to be pinched together, they don't have to be perfect, so don't think you have to have them perfect around. They start flopping a little bit. That's okay. As you see, it's a little bit flatter, but that's perfectly usable. Now, when we attach two pieces of clay together, do you remember what we have to do to the clay before we actually attach and fuse them? Was that? Slip and score, yeah. So since the clay is going on an edge, on the outside edge, but on top, we have to slip and score the outside edge of our base. So that's just, scoring is just basically cutting into the surface of the clay with your pin tool. Now when you do this, you don't want to go too deep, because if you go too deep, it could damage the clay a little bit. We only want to agitate the surface. So I just want hairline marks. But as I do this, as you see, there's a lot of hairline marks that are real close together. I don't want to separate these marks like that, because then it won't really work what you need it to. It won't really do what you want it to do. So you want to make sure you make it look like, I don't know, hair on an animal or something. So go in multiple directions. You don't have to have all these lines parallel. As long as you get the surface all scratched up pretty good. Now that I have the base scored up pretty good, you can see that I left the middle with no scoring. That's because no clay is going to go there. It's just going to be an inside base of your piece. Since I scored the base, I'm going to attach this coil to it. I also have to score one side of this coil. So I'm going to do that right now. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just get that surface pretty nice and scored. Now for the time being, we don't have slip, so water would work just fine. I have a little cup of water here. I'm just going to dip my finger in it. You don't want too much water. It'll get too wet and too mushy and it won't work the right way. So you'll dip my finger in the water. If you have a paintbrush, that'll work too. That'd probably be preferred. But for the time being, fingertips okay. I'm only going to put water on one side here. I don't have to put it on a coil because there's really no purpose for it. So I'm going to start on one end of the coil. As I go around, I'm going to slowly push this down. And the reason why I'm working on a board is so that when I move it, it turns to an actual piece. I don't really have to mess with the piece too much. I can put fingerprints in it. And as I push down, I'm not pushing down directly on top of the coil. Kind of a little bit more on the inside and outside of the coil with my thumb and pointer finger, gently pushing it down with a little bit of pressure. As you see, I'm above the base here. I'm not on the very side. So I'm pushing directly down off center of the coil. Now my coil is a little bit too long, but you can always just break it. Slip and score the two ends of the coil, or score and slip. A little bit of water. And the reason why we need to score and slip our clay for this project is because as we work, this piece is going to be pretty big, so it's going to take a while, a couple of days. I understand you guys don't want to be in school every day, so when you come back, it might be a little bit stiffer. And when two clays are not the same consistency, it has a tendency to crack a little bit easier, and the scoring and slipping just infuses it a little bit better, so you won't have to worry about that. All right, so now with the scoring and slipping, I gave it a little bit of pressure from the very top, which is good. Now this coil is pretty stuck on there, but it's not fused. You can kind of see the seam here, and we want to get rid of that seam. So what we do is we can use our finger, just like how you do with the owl pointers. Fuse them together with your finger. Now understand, some people might have longer fingernails, and this might be a little bit harder to do. So in your toolkit, you'll have what's called a wooden knife tool. It has an edge on one side, and on the other side it's rounded, and it has a little bit of curve on the other side. And what this is good for is just kind of hold it, and with your finger in that little concave divot there, you can use that as an extension of your finger and use it as your finger instead. So that way, if you do have fingernails, it'll be a little bit easier to work with. As I do this, I'm going to hold the coil down just to make sure it doesn't move too much. Give a little bit of backup pressure. I find it easier to use my thumb, but just so you know, you can use that wooden knife tool. Now I've got finger marks all the way around it, and that's what these tools are for. These are called rib tools. In your kit, there's two of them. We got a metal rib that's flexible, that has a nice sharp edge to it. So be very careful, this is sharp. And a wooden tool, which is a lot stiffer. Obviously, it's not going to flex on you, but it kind of has a set shape to it. You know, it's like a three-point rib, where it has three sides: a rounded side, a small straight side, and a long straight side. So for now, I'm not going to really use this. I find that the metal rib is a little bit easier to work with. So the proper way to hold this tool is 4 fingers on one side, thumb on the other, so that way you can bend it down and flex it. And you want to use this sharp edge right here to help smooth out the surface. So just inside backup pressure with your left hand, or with your offhand, I should say, in case someone is left-handed. I'm just going to use the edge of this and run it on the outside edge, or outside of your piece. If it starts to build up on the tool, it kind of starts building up, comes off the tool and back onto your piece. So always take a moment to clean that off and go back onto your piece to help smooth it out again. You also use your finger. If little cracks start to build up, kind of like on the surface of your piece, that means your clay's a little bit too dry. Just add a little bit of water. And those cracks will kind of just come out. Any questions so far? Everybody's okay? All right. So if you have like clay that's not round on the bottom, maybe as you pushed it down all the way down, you can just kind of trim that right off with your pin tool or your needle tool. Now I smoothed out the outside pretty good and fused that line up, but there's also a line on the inside I have to work with. So same thing as the outside, I'm going to push in from the inside. Again, I'm not pushing directly on top of the middle of the coil because that's going to ruin your rim. And any little bit of indentation on the rim now will slowly work its way up to the top of the piece. So just to help prevent that from happening, I'm trying to prevent my finger from putting pressure on the top of the coil. And again, same as the outside, we'll also use the wooden knife tool. Now, very important, when I lay these coils down, two ends have to meet to make that ring, right? And where those two ends met, we're right here. On my next coil, I don't want those two ends to meet in the same place as last time, because that's going to make a vertical line of weakness. And after firing or something, it can leave a vertical crack. So just to prevent that, real simple and easy, we're just going to connect them in a different area of that wall. So if the two ends met right here, I kind of want them to meet on the opposite side, or close to the opposite side. Again, my coil is a little too long. Cut it to fit. And that'll work. Okay, so there's another aspect to the forms of these pieces. And what we want you to do is kind of build this form to go out or in or both. So in order to do that, we can't just stack these coils on top of each other all the way up, or else you have a straight cylinder. So in order for the clay to work outward or expand, we have to make the coil of clay outside of the middle. But for the time being, we're going to act as if we want to narrow it in. So to help you out with that, kind of just think, if you want to narrow in your piece, you want to make it smaller in diameter, make the ring a little bit smaller that's going to be above the previous one. So as we lay it down, I might have to cut a couple of slots out of it. There we go, that's good enough. And score and slip the two ends. And I will score and slip the previous layer as well. But for now, I just want to make this ring. So that way I only have to attach a ring rather than make the ring after I attach the coil. So, score, a little bit of water, and fuse that seam together and make that ring, or make that coil into a ring and stay stable. So in order for this piece to go in, you're going in towards the center of the piece, all right? So imagine a little bullseye right in the middle. You want to make the next ring a little bit smaller. So I'm going to show this around. And you see, if I want to go in, you see how the coil steps in a little bit? That's exactly what I'm going to do. So to show the camera, as we see, the previous coil is a little bit wider than the next coil, and this helps bring this wall in towards the center, and it makes it a little bit more narrow. Goes in a little bit. All right. So basically just think, if you want to go in or narrow it out, make the next ring a little bit smaller. Okay? Be careful when you do this. You don't want to make a sudden change. Okay? You don't want to make a real big change from previous to next coil, or the previous coil to the next coil, because when you have something and it starts to change so suddenly, it's going to want to flop a little bit easier. So when we change direction or go in or expand, we want to do a subtle change. All right. But from here, I know the ring is a good size for us to go in a little bit. Now I'm going to score and slip. So score and slip. Just like the previous coil. Every coil is going to need to be scored and slipped on. Use that little connection a little bit better on the bottom side. And same thing as the top of the previous one. Now who remembers how tall these have to be? Roughly around 10 inches, yeah. So you're gonna be putting a lot of coils on these. So it might take you a couple of days to make. All right. And the reason why we have to have these coils so thick is because we're trying to reach about 10 inches. Does it have to be exactly 10 inches? No, but try the best you can. You know, roughly around 10 inches, give or take an inch. So I place it, score and slip, place it, again, give a little upward pressure. Again, I'm not touching the very top of this coil when I do this, kind of more off to the sides on both sides. Pressure or backup assistance with your other hand underneath, just so it doesn't collapse when you want to buckle. But again, we don't use our thumbs or wooden knife tool to smooth this connection and make it and get rid of the line. But right now I'm going to do the inside using my opposite hand as backup pressure so it doesn't ruin the bottom of the piece or the pieces I've already manipulated. All the way around. And I'm going to do the outside. You don't directly have to do it from top to bottom. You can also drag clay from the bottom upward to get rid of that seam. That's the method I prefer to use. No method is wrong. So as I pull this clay over the seam, I'm kind of just not going to the seam and stopping. I kind of want to just push it all the way to the top or all the way down. Make sure that connection is real nice and strong. Now I did that, I want to get rid of all these finger marks, back to the rib. Again, 4 fingers on one side, thumb on the other, so you can flex it pretty easily. And use the edge of that rib to smooth out the sides of your piece, the wall of your vessel. Inside hand for backup pressure. That's why it's good to be working on the board, so you don't have to touch your piece and move it all the time. So maybe if you're working on your piece and you see it's not becoming a circle, like it's starting to get a different shape on the very top, you want to keep these as round as possible for right now. So right now I'm just going to manipulate with my hands, just make it back into a circle. This is perfectly fine, perfectly normal. If you have a little gouge in there or something, maybe it was pushing on it, maybe it left a big fingerprint, just take a little bit of clay, roll it out, and fill up that hole, all right? Just be careful not to make an air bubble. So we're gonna start on one side of the piece and just work our way around, work our way over it, and that way it pushes the air out of that hole, so you don't have to worry about that. That will fill up any gouges that you might have made. Now, we can kind of see at the top is a little bit more narrow than the base. If we continue that process on making that next ring a little bit more towards the center, a little bit more towards the center, a little bit more towards the center, 3 or 4 more layers, it's going to be real narrow at the top. So we'll just continue that process until you get to the diameter you want. But for just the demo's sake, now I'm going to show you how to expand this cylinder to make it a little bit wider. And like the same thing, if you were to do this 3 or 4 times, you would really see a change into this diameter of the cylinder. So don't think you're going to see a big change after just 1 or 2 coils. It usually takes a small buildup. Again, we don't want to do a drastic change so suddenly because it'll leave a weak spot and might want to flap. For this time, I'm just going to score the top before I make this ring. So I have to do it afterwards. Again, think of it, if you're expanding the cylinder or making the diameter wider, to maybe make a belly of your vase, something that goes out more of a bulbous shape, you have to make the next ring a little bit bigger. So you want to make the cylinder bigger, make the coil or ring bigger. So just lay it down, line it up. It's best to line this up now before you cut the coil, just so you can get an idea. Okay, now I know I have enough clay there. Now I can cut it. And when this meets, it's already going to be right where I had it before. That might be a little bit too big though. There we go. Score and slip the two ends. Now I know when I attached the previous coil, the connection was about right on this side here. All right, where the two ends of the coil met. So again, I'm going to switch the position of that after I do it. And that's going to be like an inch off of where it was. That's perfectly fine as well. A little bit of score and slip on the ends. Fuse the connection with your fingertips or the wooden knife tool. All right. So score and slip the ring. Get a good attachment. Look at this. This is going to be a pretty long project. So you don't want to waste your time basically working on this and not attaching these coils correctly and have it crack or explode in the kiln or break. It would be heartbreaking. Not for just you, but for us as well. Score, well, slip the scoring. Or water if you don't have slip. Score to score. And again, backup pressure underneath. I'm using my thumb on the inside and fingers on the out. Give it a little bit of tension from the top. Really give it a good starting connection. Again, I'm not pushing directly on the top center of the coil. All right, so that's pretty good. And then next step is to fuse it. Again, if you have any hairline cracks forming up, just wet them. They'll come out. Use my thumb, push down and fuse this clay. I'm going to get rid of that line. Backup pressure on the inside. Very important. Clean it up with the rib. Anytime I use the rib, again, backup pressure. We're not going to use the rib on the inside, just the outside. You don't really have to smooth in the inside too much. And if you want to smooth a little bit of the inside, just use your hand or a sponge. It's just going to be too difficult to try to get this rib on the inside without destroying it. It might cut up the wall on the opposite side you're trying to focus on. Now I'm going to smooth in the inside with my finger. Inside's a little bit easier. I kind of just wrap my hand around it, and that just works just fine. I use my thumb to pull up the clay. Any questions so far? Oh, everybody look.
just divide that up.
So we can kind of see where the top's starting to go out a little bit more. And again, this will really be shown a lot easier after 3 or 4 coils to build it up. You can kind of see how it's coming out. All right. So recognize that we're not going to do this for our piece, because again, one of the requirements is to make a shape that's a little bit different than a cylinder. And that's the only way you can really do it with a coil little piece. So I do have an example to show you guys. And you guys have already seen this online, but to kind of give you a little bit more of an idea now, since we're here and working with the piece.
And once we start really adding the details, like on Mr. Sickle's sample, we're going to go in and we'll make some really good slip to get all these pieces attached really well. Because they're going to be free-formed, they're not going to be smoothed in, so we're going to need to go and really make sure we attach those, have a really nice bond.
So I kind of went more traditional Jomon Pottery here, where I kind of have a more straighter base and it comes out to a bowl shape on the top. Again, it's the same techniques I just showed you. As I built up to about this point, I started going out more with my coils, and then again, this is probably 4 or 5 layers before you're really seeing a drastic change. And that's what we're aiming for. You don't want to do it too suddenly again. With these coil designs, they're just small coils rolled out. I kind of drew a little bit of a template on my piece with the back side of my pin tool to kind of follow the line. Basically, if you did this beforehand and you didn't like how the design came out in the actual piece, you're able to rub that indentation out so it doesn't ruin your piece. Where if you score it before you actually plan it out, it's kind of hard to fix that and get rid of those hairline marks. But score and slip, add the little coils where you want it. Remember, follow the form. The organic form was just a bigger coil that I was just playing around with, and just pinch it out, work with it, and it kind of just got it to a shape where I thought it was nice looking. So that's when I attached it. And again, added the coils onto that as well. The texture, I literally just used the back scratcher and just kind of made marks into the surface. So again, we only need 3 designs: texture, the coil design, and 2 organic forms that acts as a handle. Now it doesn't actually have to look like a handle, but I could definitely grab this after it's fired and use it as a handle. Any questions? No? All right. Guess we'll